Hi folks, welcome to Bites by MSDN, and I'm Billy Hollis. Today I've got Ron Jacobs, my good friend, here with me to talk a little bit about what he's been doing. First of all, now I know you've changed a bit since the last time I had a long chance to talk to you when you were in the Patterns and Practices group. What are you working on right now?
Well, you know, today we announced this big news, this App Fabric thing. And so Windows Server App Fabric is the kind of area that I've been focused on. Now this fits largely in, you know, web services, workflow, service-oriented architecture, and that kind of space, which is what I've been doing for the 10 plus years I've been at Microsoft.
So what's the elevator speech for App Fabric? I mean, what does somebody say to you and you go, you need App Fabric?
Well, you know, I haven't written it yet, but, but let me see if I can get close. The thing is, when you create web services, what people are realizing is more and more of our business logic and the things we depend on for the back-end hard work of the app has to happen in this increasingly scalable environment. And the big problem has been a lot of businesses are just sinking so much money into keeping the lights on, running the servers and building
just the plumbing, the underneath plumbing that makes the app work.
That's right. Now we've announced this whole big, you know, cloud thing and Windows Azure, and so people said, well, that's great. You got this cloud thing, but the cloud thing doesn't look like the on-premise thing, and do I have to choose one or the other, and how's that going to work? So we're really happy that we can finally say that we have one model. It scales all the way from on-premise to the cloud, and that's the Windows Server App Fabric. And later, the Windows Azure Platform App Fabric will come along next year. You'll see a beta release of that. And so the way this works is you create your web services, use the same skills that you use today. It's WCF services. In .NET 4, we have an all-new workflow engine in Windows Workflow 4.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's really great because it's declarative, it's powerful. You ask for what you want and just let the platform deliver it. You don't have to say how. And that's the best part, because if you start saying how, you mess it up.
That's right. So you get to be a lot more dynamic. You just kind of declare what you want. You can do some things on the fly you couldn't do before. Get an app that responds dynamically.
Well, it's like I know you're a WPF guy, right?
I love it.
You know? And sure, could people do, you know, these cool graphic things before? Sure, they could have written DirectX. They could have done a lot of that stuff, but it was hard. And you built a lot of really tough code, and you know, you got something out. But WPF made it so that almost anybody could do this.
So people who are lazy like me can do it.
That's right.
So now it's people who are lazy can put together these pretty massive and scalable systems.
Well, you shouldn't have to be a genius. And that's the thing. If we've got a system and you got to be a genius to make it work, it's never going to scale. And we need thousands and millions of developers around the world to build the kind of infrastructure it's going to take for the next 50 years to build apps that work. That's what App Fabric is about.
How long will it take us to kind of understand what we ought to do on our side and the architectures we ought to do to encapsulate our business rules and ways? Is that a big cliff to make this fit into App Fabric, or is it pretty much doing what people do now?
It's not a big cliff. It's very similar to what you do now. I would say the biggest thing is, first of all, you got to get workflow. I mean, I know a lot of people look at this and they're like, workflow? No, trust me, it's great. And once you get your grip on workflow, if you can write apps that work in Windows Workflow on a local machine, man, you can throw that thing in the cloud. It will just zoom.
Just as a container for business logic, places to put things that you might normally write more imperative code for.
Yeah, it involves a little bit different thinking because now you can get beyond just request response. So most people have been making web services, they think in terms of chunks of request response. I make a request, do some work, get back a response. But the real world business processes are really more complicated than that. Like maybe I'm going to send a request, it gets stored in a database, we got to send an email to you, you got to look at something, say, yeah, that's good, you're going to send back to me. This whole thing could take days, right? And writing that with a typical web service was next to impossible. So what a workflow does is it gives me a capability to model that whole process, even something that takes days, gives me persistence, gives me tracking, and gives me a great experience in building it, and that's what workflow can do.
Well, that's great, Ron, and I'm looking forward to spending a lot more time with that, and I think a lot of the folks out there will be looking forward to spending time with App Fabric as something that we're all going to need to know about. So thank you very much. This is Billy Hollis for Bites by MSDN, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing from Ron Jacobs.